Greetings, my friends. This is Celeria Rosenkreuz, and on this episode of the Chronological Quran, episode 15, we shall continue on and nearly reach the end of Surah 73, wherein we shall have an interesting sort of apocalyptic interlude, a few cases of Allah trying to scare people into believing in Him, a bit of editing-related troubles within the body of texts, and, of course, the narrative supplying different reasons as to why one should actually believe in Muhammad. There's some complexity there. It is worth noting, before we begin properly, though, the traditional chronology of the Quran reports ayat 10 and 11 were inserted later at Medina, rather than being original to this part of the text. That, we shall see shortly, is quite integral to understanding the proper meaning of this passage. Or perhaps I should say, differentiating the original meaning from the meaning that they transitioned to later on, once the text was being properly edited. So it begins at ayah 10. Be patient, O Prophet, with what they say, and depart from them courteously with gracious avoidance. And leave me with the matter of the deniers, those of ease in life, and allow them respite a little. Bear with them for a while. Lo, with us are heavy fetters and a raging fire. Now, I bid you notice what the insertion of these twin verses does to the text. Originally, you have the verses bidding the listeners, Lord of the East and West, there is no Allah but Him, so choose thou Him alone for thy defender. Leading directly into, Lo, with us are heavy fetters and a raging fire. Whereas now you have passages urging politeness and patience between these, which gives a very different impression, one where Allah is painted as much more kind towards Muhammad and his followers in the edited version of the surah, and the fire and chains are not directly associated with Allah's claim that He is deserving of lordship. I suppose it does send the wrong sort of message, so I can't fault the choice from a sort of literary strategic standpoint. It just seems like something you should have realized would be an issue immediately and avoided if you are an all-knowing God. Continuing on, we reach ayah 13. Choking food and painful punishment is in store for them. Grievous chastisement, a painful doom. On the day the earth and the mountains will shake violently, that they will be reduced to dunes of shifting sand. Indeed, we have sent to you a messenger as a witness over you, just as we sent a messenger to the Pharaoh. But Pharaoh disobeyed the messenger, and so we seized him with a terrible seizure. We seized him with no gentle grip. Here, we have Allah turning to apocalyptic language for the second time, the first being in Surah 68:42, and this day anchoring it in biblical reference, whilst also taking the opportunity to compare Muhammad with Moses. Interesting to see that only the negative aspects of the apocalypse continue to be brought up, rather than the blessings that are poured out upon the faithful at that time. Also interesting that in placing Muhammad in the position of Moses, Allah strongly implies that the Day of Judgment will be happening very soon, within Muhammad's lifetime, and that those who do not turn away from their wicked ways will live to see it. Of course, that's not how history played out, regardless of the fact that those men did get what punishment they had coming to them by Muhammad's armies taking their lands and eradicating much of their culture. Though certainly not all, or else we wouldn't have the cube sitting with us in Mecca right now. 17. If you pagans persist in disbelief, then how will you guard yourself against the horrors of the day which will turn children's hair gray? It will even cause the sky to split apart, the very heaven being then rent asunder. His promise is to be fulfilled. It must be accomplished, certainly. Surely, this is a reminder. This is an admonition. Therefore, whosoever will, let him take the straight path to his Lord. Here we reach the crescendo of the chapter, where the horrors that await are elevated to their highest level, though in some ways also the most abstract. After the peak in horror, it is undercut with an insistence that this is not a threat, but a warning, and there is still time to act before it is too late. As such, those people who are listening definitely ought to turn to Islam, if they don't want to forever burn, choke, and tremble at the Lord of creation's dreadful punishment. Yes, that is definitely the right thing to do. Oh, and this is the first time the path, or the straight path, is mentioned / alluded to in the Quran, which I say is significant. With that being said, we have but one ayah remaining. Ayah 20, which is quite significant in size, and is another one that was inserted after the fact into the Quran, to sort of cap off the narrative here. It may be some time before I get to that, but we shall see. That having been said, this has been Celeria Rosenkreuz, and until next my words greet your ears, I bid you farewell.